Thank you all for being a part of Vanyajeev Mahotsav organized by Aranya. This session is in collaboration with the National Zoological Park, Delhi. It aims to spread awareness and to learn from the experiences of Dr. Sonali Ghosh, IFS, Deputy Inspector General of Forests, Central Zoo Authority Director, National Zoological Park, Delhi. We would like to request our convener, Dr. Ratnam Kolbattal, to share her thoughts and brief about the same.
Thank you, Shreya. Good evening. It gives me immense pleasure in welcoming Dr. Sonali Ghosh to the virtual portals of Zakir Hussain Delhi College. I'm delighted that Aranya, the team of Nature and Environment Society, has taken this initiative of organizing activities in this Wildlife Week. I would also like to express my gratitude to Dr. Ghosh for agreeing to collaborate with Zakir Hussain Delhi College and involving our students as volunteers on the field. It further excites me in a manner in getting associated with zoo once again after several decades. It takes me back to my childhood when I had countless picnics in zoo, either with family or school. It was a different world altogether. I don't know if such trips still happen. We are living in a virtual world where media has tremendous role to play and everything you get to see through digital world. As we grew up, we got caught up in the debate of whether animals should be kept in captivity or not. Should zoos be banned or abolished? Animal rights activists are of the opinion that there is a difference in the natural habitat of the animals and the environment of captivity. But at the same time, the conservation is an important aspect when we are considering the endangered species, and that cannot be ruled out. The only question that comes to my mind is what happens to evolution by natural selection and survival of the fittest. I'm sure today's talk by Dr. Sonali Ghosh will throw some light on this aspect. Looking forward to the talk by our illustrious guest, Dr. Ghosh. I hand over the platform to Shreya. Welcome once again, Dr. Ghosh. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enlightening words. Now, I invite Smriti to introduce our honorable guest speaker to the audience.
A very warm evening to all. I feel such great honor in speaking a few words from the inspiring life of Dr. Sonali Ghosh. Born into a family of army personnel, Sonali Ghosh knew from an early age that she wished to be involved in forest and wildlife conservation. A topper of the Indian Forest Service Batch 2000-2003, she is armed with a slew of degrees, including postgraduate degrees in forestry and wildlife science, a postgraduate diploma in environmental law from the National Law School of India, and another one in systems management. She has also won a doctorate in remote sensing technology concerning habitat suitability for tigers in the Indo-Bhutan Manas landscape. She is holding the position of Deputy Inspector General of Forests, Central Zoo Authority Director, National Zoological Park. Heartiest welcome to you, ma'am. Without further delay, I humbly invite our honored guest to take the stage and enlighten our audience.
Thank you so much, and very, very warm good evening to everybody. My sincere apologies. It has been a crazy day today in terms of Wildlife Week activities happening everywhere. I could not meet some of you who had come to our zoo today. But I'm assuming, and Dr. Kaul, thank you so much. Your kids are amazing. These students are power packed. So a big hand to all of you, for doing this in spite of, having everything and the pandemic and the challenges. So thank you so much. And I think it's so heartening to see all of you, the young people, Shreya, Smriti, and everybody else. And I remember somebody gave me a call and they said that, ma'am, we want you. So I said, my condition is if you're going to volunteer for me in the zoo, only then I'll talk. They said, yeah, we'll volunteer. So that was the good thing. So, but thank you so much. What I realized is that it would be really nice, and I want to introduce Ms. Priyanka Chaudhary. She is my colleague within the zoo. And Priyanka is, again, she is young. She knows the language that you all speak. So she will be able to tell in a better manner that what the zoo holds for you. I'm available. I'm going to listen, and, I'll be available for taking up question and answers, not just for the zoo, but for your career options or whatever. So we will do that in the end. But for the overall presentation for the Delhi Zoo, I'll request Priyanka to do it. But let me tell you, and let me set the scene. Most of you, and I'm assuming all of you are science students, right? Like, yes, okay, Shreya, and so, yeah. So, when we are doing our school and college, we are kind of, okay, options are medical, biotechnology, we look at kind of laboratory-based sciences, but there is something called wildlife science. And I was lucky enough to do this in a college called the Wildlife Institute of India, which is in Dehradun, and it admits only 7 students. So the reason is that it's an extremely specialized and niche subject, but it is fascinating. And it is fascinating because you're looking at more than 700 odd protected areas. You're looking at more than 200 zoos. You're looking at a very rich biodiversity of the country, which is wild biodiversity, and there is a chance to contribute to that. So how does one contribute to that? That is something which, as college students, one can look at. So the easiest is, of course, doing higher research, like doing masters, PhDs, going abroad. Many of these courses that are there in wildlife and conservation are mostly outside the country because there it's a specialized science. But other than that, there is another field, and which is very popular perhaps, is the civil service. So many of you would want to aspire or are probably preparing for the Indian Forest Service, for the Indian Administrative Service, for the other services. And now probably you all know that it's a single exam, and many people who are appearing for the Indian Administrative Services are also science graduates or engineering graduates. So it's not as if that only the Forest Service gives you the platform, it's all the services. And within that, and I'm coming to the point, is that within the Forest Service, you are either posted in forest areas like territorial divisions where you are planting trees, you are managing watersheds, you're doing a lot of forest activity. Or you could also be posted in wildlife areas like Corbett National Park or Nanda Devi National Park or the National Zoo, which is the Delhi Zoo. And in this, the primary aim is that we are looking at 2 types of conservation. Perhaps you all know this term, ex situ conservation and in situ conservation. So in situ, within. So in situ means when you're protecting or preserving the wild animals, the flora and fauna within the environment where they are found. For example, the easiest example in Delhi is Asolabhati Wildlife Sanctuary. How many of you have gone there? Can you raise your hand if anybody has gone? So Asolabhati Sanctuary is a very interesting place. It was actually created over abandoned mines. So it's a fantastic area. I mean, if given a choice, and what I will do is that with your group, I'll be happy to take you to Asolabhati sometime. And the kind of forest, the kind of biodiversity which has come out there, it's unbelievable. So it's a clear example of how when you protect trees, when you protect a forest, that it comes back. So when the forest comes back, the animals come back, right? That's how the thing happens. So that is in situ. But if you have to protect an animal outside its habitat for various reasons, and I think the best example world over is the giant panda, right? Have you seen the WWF symbol? It has this cute animal of which is the giant panda. Now the giant panda is found in China and in many places, and in the natural habitat, the giant panda had a big issue. You know, it's an animal which is biologically, it's a difficult animal. It doesn't breed well, and its habitat was destructing. So what do? So then you take it out of its habitat, that is ex situ. You keep it in, specialized facilities like zoos and conservation breeding facilities, and you increase its population so that it can go back, right? And India, we have one of the most successful program for ex situ. Anybody has heard of Project Ghadial and Project Crocodile, right? So Project Ghadial was started at the same time when you had the Project Tiger. And Project Tiger was started in 1973. So they said that in 1973, they said that we will protect the tiger means we will protect its habitat. But at the same time, there was this ex situ project of Ghadial. They said, let us get the eggs, the young ones of the Ghadial, we'll hatch them. And once the babies are big enough, we will release them back into the wild. So that's how India's conservation ex situ movement have started. India has done very well, let me tell you, and let us all be very happy about it, when we started with the zoos in the country, when we got independence, we had more than 600 zoos, right? And these zoos were in very bad shape. You know, some of these zoos had, animals in cages. Some of them were circus animals and so on. If some of you remember, or if you ask your parents, when they used to be young, they used to be taken to circuses, bhalu ka naach dikhane, right? Or if you have heard of the term kalandar, right? So there used to be dancing bears. So wo bhalu ko jo hai dance karate the. But it is very inhuman. It's cruel. Because to make an animal do that, you have to literally, break it. You have to either maim it, you have to put, ropes in the nostrils of the bears. For the saperas, which have, cobras, they actually take out the fangs. They remove the fangs of the cobra, because otherwise, how will it survive? So the cobras, they are reptiles. So they survive for weeks, months, and then they die off. And again, the snake catcher goes, captures a snake, and he replaces it. So this is how it was happening. And then they said, no, I think that's not fair, and we should treat animals the way we treat everybody, right? So this whole aspect of what we call as empathy, compassion, right? So Indian way of the way we look at it, it is all about, treating everybody equally. And they said, fine, so let us look at animals properly, and let us come up with some sort of a regulation, some standard of keeping the animals properly. And that's how Central Zoo Authority was born in 1992. And Central Zoo Authority managed to close down almost 400 zoos. And when they say close down, it said you have to close it and remove the animal from there and keep it in a better place. And that's how right now in India, we have around 150 zoos and rescue centers which are recognized by Central Zoo Authority, and they have what we call as the minimum standards. It says that अगर एक टाइगर रखना है, अगर एक भालू रखना है, तो उसको इतनी जगह आपको देनी पड़ेगी, राइट? उसके लिए इतना डॉक्टर आपको रखना पड़ेगा, इतना खाना आपको देना पड़ेगा. अगर आप नहीं कर सकते, you don't make a zoo, you don't keep it, you give it off to somebody, and we will take care of it. So that's how the zoos have come about. And the Delhi Zoo is, I think, one of the best in that sense that it started with that idea way back in 1959 that it will be there to educate and to make the conservation outreach. So with this, what I'll do is that I'll end here. I'll listen to Priyanka's talk about Delhi Zoo, and then let us open up for more discussion. Is that fine? So thank you. And Priyanka, do you want to share your screen? Yeah. I think you're not audible.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible now?
Yes, yes.
So thank you so much, ma'am. It was a nice introduction by you. I would like to share my screen. Is it visible to everyone?
Yes, it is, Priyanka. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. Hello, everyone. I will be talking very frankly with you, and you can ask me as many number of questions as you can. Um, so my goal will be to tell you about how zoo functions, what zoo is. We all go to zoo as a visitor, and we never know what is behind the curtains. How many people are working day and night to make a zoo what it looks like to the visitor. We almost or every time when we go, it is for recreational purpose only, but then there are so many forces acting behind it to make the animal presentable to the visitors and making it them almost a celebrity. Every time people are coming, they are posing. So let's begin with the National Zoological Park brief introduction. Uh, NZP is a large category zoo. As per ma'am has said that CZA is their central zoo authority which regulates and controls all the zoos in India. It has categorized a zoo on the basis of how many number of species they contain and what is the area of the zoo. So on that basis, there are large category zoos, medium category zoos, small zoos, and mini zoos. So on the basis of because our area is 188 acre area, and we have 91 species in our zoo, we are categorized as a large category zoo. And the basis of formation of the zoo is immersion approach. Immersion approach is the one in which when you look at the animal, you see an animal without any barriers. There are no cages. The animal seems to move freely to us. We perceive as the animal is moving in its own habitat as if it has never been caged, never it's not captive. So that is immersion approach. What happens in this is we have the night cells behind and an arena in front of the visitors. The arena is encircled by a moat. Moat is such that the animal cannot cross the moat. It is based on the behavior of the animal. If the animal is, say for example, the animal is tiger, then we can have it freely moving in the enclosure, like because we know that tigers cannot jump up to that extent. But if we are talking about leopards, then it has to be caged because leopards can take a long leap, so they always have to be in a net cage. So yeah, so the Delhi Zoo was first of its kind in India, which was designed on the basis of immersion approach, and it was done by a German biologist, Carl Hagenbeck. Yeah. So after its designing and everything took place, it got finally inaugurated on 1st November 1959 by the then Minister of Agriculture. So currently we are having 91 species in our zoo, in which 38 are mammals, 12 reptiles, 41 species of birds. Yeah, so I was talking that we never know behind the working of the zoo uh, how many people are working. So the zoo works on 10 verticals. There are 10 sections of a zoo. First is the animal section. Animal section basically look after the animals. उनको रोज सुबह खोलना से लेके उनको शाम उनको नहलाना धुलाना उनका पूरा बाड़े का देख रेख करना. Even the enrichment part is also taken care by the animal section. उनको सुबह खोलने से उनको बांधने तक का जितना भी उनका देख रेख होता है वो एनिमल सेक्शन करता है। सेकेंड इज दी वेटनरी सेक्शन। वेटनरी सेक्शन क्या करता है, रोज सारे जानवरों को देखते हैं कि उनको कोई प्रॉब्लम तो नहीं है, किसी को कुछ अगर मेडिकल अटेंशन की ज़रूरत हो तो दैट इज टेकन केयर बाय द वेटनरी सेक्शन। उनका इवन दी डिसइंफेक्टेशन शेड्यूल इज फिक्स्ड, immunization is also done for all the animals, so that is also taken care by the veterinary section. Then third comes the research section that we all are well aware of. Research section, what they do is all the research related to the animal. What is the behavior of the animal? If they are not behaving well, what is the reason behind it? What may be the parasitic load of the animal? Is the animal in stress or not? All that is taken care by the research section. And apart from that also, maintaining genetic diversity of the animal is also very important, because we do not want to get into the inbreeding depression. So that bloodline change is also taken care by the research section. That is done by maintaining the database of the animals. Next section is the education section. All the outreach activities like meeting new people and calling volunteers for getting in volunteers for the zoo, using social media to major large zoos in India are in the metropolitan cities like Mumbai Zoo, Delhi Zoo, Patna Zoo. All they are in the mid of a city, so they are also acting as a green space or the lungs of that city. Then research is foremost, because हमारे पास they all the animals that we have, it's very difficult to go in the wild and to study them in the wild. But it's very, if you have an animal in your close proximity, just like in zoos, you can easily see them, easily observe them, have study their behavioral sample, but which is very difficult and in the wild animal. So they can act as a role model, they can act as a model for these kind of study. So this kind of research, basically those promote research a lot in the wild animals. Then of course recreation, that it is meant for. And also it gives a message of fitness, like for example in our zoos we have banned the vehicles. Every staff works either they go going to one place to another, they either go by walk or they use bicycle. So our campus is free of the vehicle, so we also give the message of staying healthy and healthy life to the general public. Yeah, apart from that, yes. So I talked about the foremost roles of the zoo, and I said that conservation breeding is the most important and topmost prior goal. So I'll like to throw some light on conservation breeding. There are two types of breeding that happen in a zoo. One is the captive breeding, and another is the conservation breeding. Captive breeding is the breeding of all the animals that are present in the zoo. So if an animal is in the zoo and it is breeding, we tend to keep the animals in the pairs or in their social behavior, social groups. जिस social group में वो wild में रहता है, उसी social groups में हम उनको zoo में रखते हैं. So they'll tend to breed. So if an animal is breeding in a zoo, that will be called as captive breeding. But if we are breeding an animal specifically for the of their conservation, if the animal is endangered, for example, Sangai. Sangai is endangered. For example, Royal Bengal tiger, it is endangered. So we are breeding an animal, and with the aim of rewilding its population to its to its natural habitat, then it's called as conservation breeding. So for conservation breeding, Central Zoo Authority has classified zoos or identified zoos as participating zoos or coordinating zoos. Participating zoo are the zoos that participates in the conservation breeding of the endangered species, and coordinating zoos are the ones that are present in the wild habitat of the species, and all the participating zoos coordinates with the coordinating zoos to rewild its population. Okay? Participating zoos cannot rewild the population, so they by their own, they have to first coordinate with the coordinating zoo. coordinating zoo will help them to rewilder its population. Like for example, NZP is participating zoo for the conservation breeding of these 5 species that I have shown here: Royal Bengal tiger, one-horned rhino, Sangai deer, Asiatic lion, and red jungle fowl. Now we have very good breeding and fawning of Sangai deer in our zoo. So in around 2001 or 2, we proposed the coordinating zoo, that is the Manipur Zoo. Sangai deer is found in the only in the Cable Lamjau National Park in India, that is in Manipur, and it is endemic to that place. So we coordinated with the Manipur Zoo to rewilder its population there. So next goal that zoos plays that I talked about is the conservation education. So conservation education is to educate the general masses about the wildlife and to basically create awareness in the public about conserving these species. So that can be through these all the mediums that I have mentioned here, workshops that guys are organizing on these platforms now, especially social media. Also, very recently, through the efforts of Sonali ma'am, we have got a verified account of Twitter handle, which is very new thing for us in lately. Then various awareness campaigns, keepers talks, tours, nature walks, cleanliness drives, and conferences, expert talks, etc. And we will be also happy to collaborate with you for any of these things if you are happy with your society. If you feel like. Okay, then I talked about the research part. And in that I said that you can do various researches based on, especially when they are present as a specimen right in front of you. You can do their behavior study. That is very difficult to do in the wild. Also, yeah, to maintain their behavior just like they do in the wild is what if we have to make their enclosure just like their wild habitat, and so that they behave here also just like they would have been behaving in the wild. We do their enrichment can be of 5 types, that is physical, sensory, feeding, cognitive, and social enrichment. So physical enrichment is the enrichment of their enclosures, like basically giving them some platforms, giving them some swings. This is specifically meant for keeping your animal engaged so that they remains healthy. So in wild they might be walking a lot, but in enclosure they have a limited area, so they do not tend to walk that much, or they do not tend to climbing that they might be doing in the wild. So this kind of undulating structures, platforms, swings, they are provided them as a physical enrichment to keep them healthy and active. Then the sensory enrichment. Sensory enrichment is basically for, in wild they might be meeting a lot of other species. They might be going into each other territories also. So smelling the scents, they know that maybe tiger is here. If a bear goes in and smells the scent of some deer, so they might be alert that okay, here is someone. So this kind of sensory enrichment by occasionally putting the fecal matter of another species into someone else's enclosure, or urine sample of leopard in deer enclosure to alert them to so that they know that okay, deer is here, we have to be warned, and so that they become active and their senses are alerted. This kind of activities we could keep on doing, and it is called as sensory enrichment of the species. Next is the feeding enrichment. Feeding enrichment is that in wild they may be eating so many different varieties of fruits, and of course the various variety of wild fruits, that would be fruits and wild this thing that we might never know. But in zoo we have a fixed schedule that we give this to the bear, we give this to the leopard. So what we do for feeding enrichment, we keep on changing our feed schedule. Either we change the time of the feeding, we change the place of the feeding, we sometimes hide the feed in the enclosure, so they go this by smelling, they keep searching where can be the food is. Maybe they have to dig sometime कि आज food जमीन में छुपा दिया है, to keep them engaged. तो just like we give, हम तो उनको सीधा खाना ऑफर कर देते हैं नाद में, तो वो तो वहाँ से खा लेते हैं, जस्ट लाइक हम गाय भैंस को करते हैं घर में, तो वो उनको कुछ वो करना तो पड़ता नहीं है, पर वाइल्ड में तो उनको खाना ढूंढना पड़ता है ना, तो हम फीडिंग एनरिचमेंट करने के लिए खाना छुपा देते हैं बाड़े में, या तो खाना चेंज कर देते हैं, उनका थोड़ा कंटेंट चेंज कर देते हैं, या उनकी प्लेस चेंज कर देते हैं, या फिर उसको एनक्लोजर में कहीं छुपा देते हैं, सो दैट दे हैव टू सर्च इट, खुद से सर्च करेंगे, खुद ढूंढ के खाएंगे, या फिर इवन हैंग कर देते हैं कहीं पे, तो ऊपर चढ़ेंगे, देन गेट इट. This kind of enrichment is called as feeding enrichment. Next is the cognitive enrichment. Cognitive enrichment is to check their mind. उनका जो इंटेलिजेंस है वो चेक करने के लिए और इंटेलिजेंस इंप्रूव करने के लिए कॉग्निटिव एनरिचमेंट किया जाता है. इट इज़ लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल इफ़ यू गिव एन इस तरीके का कुछ पजल फीडर दे दो उनको, एक खाना किसी चीज़ में, बैम्बू में, या तो छुपा के दे दो, या इस तरीके से करके दे दो कि उनको कुछ करना पड़े वो खाना लेने के लिए, तब वो बार बार करते हैं तो सीख जाते हैं कि अच्छा ऐसे होता है, तो ऐसे करना पड़ता है इसको, तभी खाना मिलेगा मुझे. Just like one we have done for, I'll show in the next slide, we have done for beer. Like for example, you can see here this fellow is putting मूंगफली in this गोला. सो इसमें सिर्फ एक ही छेद है और उसमें वो ये मूंगफलियाँ डाल रहा है. अब भालू को ये पता है कि अब मैं इसको हिलाऊंगा तो मूंगफलियाँ ज़मीन पे गिरेंगी और फिर वो ज़मीन से उठा के ये मूंगफलियाँ खाता है. तो whenever नेक्स्ट टाइम हम इसमें हनी डाल देते हैं तो वो सूंघता सूंघता आता है, फिर अब उसको पता है कि पहले तो मुझे इसको घुमाना पड़ेगा तभी मुझे खाना मिलेगा, तो ही इज नाउ हैबिचुअल टू इट. सो ऑल दीज काइंड ऑफ पजल फीडर्स, पजल्स, they are called as cognitive enrichment. Next and last is the social enrichment. Social enrichment is to maintain their social groupings. तो मेल फीमेल को एक साथ खोलना, कभी दो फीमेल्स को एक साथ खोलना, दिस काइंड ऑफ सोशल बॉन्डिंग एक तरीके से बनाना, या फिर इन अदर zoos also this is done that males and female pairs are changed, because in wild ऐसा नहीं है कि there is always one pair, so species के according उनका पार्टनर भी चेंज कर देते हैं. That is called as social enrichment. Yeah, so apart from that, I would like to discuss some of the new initiatives that our zoo has recently taken. You might be well aware of all the things that Delhi Zoo keeps on doing, that is always on the news, but there are other things that we are coming up, and you might be able to better contribute to us in some form or the other, especially in the research and education field. First, we have procured latest technology devices like blood analyzer and this portable X-ray machine, ultrasound machine. This is for our veterinary section, and it is for the better upkeep of our animals. So we can now carry our ultrasound machine on the field and take the ultrasound of the animal if we think so, because it is very difficult to carry the animal from the enclosure to the veterinary hospital, and in that process the animal tends to come in the stress, तो उसकी जो medical condition already खराब है, it tends to worse. So we got the portable devices कि हमें अपना animal hospital में लेके नहीं आना बार बार, because it's very stressful for the animals, especially the deers, because they tend to come in capture myopathy. If we try to capture them, they get so stressed that their BP gets so high that they get a heart attack. That is called as myopathy. They die of that. Now we can carry our devices to the site location of the animal, do their medical checkup there only, and get the things done. Then next initiative that we doing is we are keeping all the medical records and all the history on Zoomis and ZIMS. That is an international platform all the zoos, or mostly over. I think ma'am will be better able to tell how many zoos are connected on the thing. So internationally, many zoos are connected from all across the countries, and they are keeping the medical records of all their animals and sharing with one another. Then we are also encouraging and engaging the youngsters, interns, and volunteers like you to come to our zoo and work with us and help us for its betterment. Then, as I told you, we are very much doing intensive disinfection drive in the zoo and managing COVID and avian flu very nicely. Then we are also doing the capacity building of our staff through various workshops, and four are lined in this wildlife week only. Then we have now CCTV, all our campuses CCTV enabled, and all the enclosures of our animals are CCTV enabled. So we are doing 24/7 monitoring of all our animals. This is the new young lion that we have brought very recently, and we are monitoring him. Then I to change the bloodline to avoid inbreeding and pairing of the animals. So very recently we have done many animal exchanges, and one is under process under the leadership of Sonali ma'am. Then yeah, we are signing MOUs with various universities for supporting our and strengthening our research section. And also we have I talked to you about the security team of our this NZP. So there is one team that is called as quick response team or rapid response team that responds rapidly if an animal अगर कोई animal खुल जाता है बाड़े में से या निकल जाता है बाहर, तो it becomes a havoc. So to control that or to या कोई अदर दूसरी मिसहैपनिंग भी हो जाती है, जैसे से फॉर एग्जांपल कोई फायर लग जाए जू में, तो उसको एकदम से टैकल करने के लिए एक टीम है दैट इज रैपिड रिस्पॉन्स टीम, एंड वी आर स्ट्रेंथनिंग बेसिकली मैम इज स्ट्रेंथनिंग दैट टीम बाय प्रोवाइडिंग them the latest technology equipment so that action can be taken as soon as possible. Yeah, apart from that, there are other initiatives which we are taking, in which you might be of help to us, is that we are making a photo book of all the animals of our zoo. So we have one 1200 something animals in our zoo. All the animals have to be they photographed and named, and a book is to be made so we have the record of all our animals. उन सबका एक फोटो लगेगा और उनका नाम लिख के एक पूरी बुकलेट बनेगी. Then we are also documenting the insect biodiversity of NZP through citizen science. So whenever you come to zoo next time, you can identify some of the insects and send us photographs of it, claiming that ma'am this insect is this one, and so we'll definitely include that in our book, and it will be very helpful in documenting all the biodiversity of our zoo. Then then we are also documenting enrichment plan for all the zoo animals and an SOP for animal transfer. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for enlightening us with the insights of zoo. Now, I invite Pramit and Utkarsh to start with the Q&A session.
Are we audible?
Yes, you are audible.
So, good evening, everyone. My name is Pramit. I'm Utkarsh, and it is such a delight that we get the opportunity of interacting with Dr. Ghosh. We really wanted today that I actually went to the zoo. I was thinking if I could meet ma'am personally, but I understand she had a busy schedule. But I hope that we make up while this virtual session. So, ma'am, we had a lot of questions from our audience. So we'll begin at in one go. We have filtered out some. Yeah, so we'll be doing it alternately now. So the first question is that what are the complications of COVID on zoo animals at the moment?
Okay, yeah, no, thank you. I'm happy to take it, and of course, thank you, Priyanka, for helping out and doing this. Yeah, we must give her a big hand, of course, for this. Yeah, so right. Okay, and thank you, Dr. Utkarsh, for asking that question. It has been interesting because if all of you know, if the students know, we are talking about zoonotic diseases. Now, what is zoonotic? Zoonotic means any transmission of a disease from a animal to human. And it is very interesting that we have at least out of the 10, we have diseases that impact human beings. We have at least 6 or 7 of them are of zoonotic origin. That is what we say. And the pandemic actually jolted us out of this slumber that how something like as simple as a SARS virus could mutate and become so viral that it can cause a pandemic. So it was all okay in terms of knowing the origins, knowing how to combat it and all. But what was worrying is the reverse transmission. So for example, in case of felids, and when I say felids, we have had lions, we have had tigers, we have had snow leopards and jaguars in foreign zoos. They seem to have got what is the reverse transmission of the COVID virus. Now, that has been a cause of concern in terms of curbing it. In India also, we had cases of lions in Hyderabad Zoo, in Vandalur Zoo, who were impacted by COVID. And thankfully, they recovered. There was a mortality in Vandalur Zoo. But as such, I think as of now, whatever research is available to us, it is being seen that probably it's something which the animals can sustain and withstand because they are fairly strong and so they are able to shed the virus. So that is the thing. But eventually, I think the research, the way it is going, is to create a vaccine for animals and also kind of strengthen the testing, mechanisms for animals. So imagine, I mean, this is for all of you youngsters. We never think of it, but when we do a COVID test, what is it? We have to put a swab in the neck, in the nose, and in the throat. Imagine doing that for a lion, right? So who's going to do it? So that's why it is very important that we come up with better mechanisms and better methods, and that too when we are doing this for captive animals. What do you do for free-ranging animals? How do you test them for COVID? So these are some of the research frontiers which have opened up, and the zoos especially interact a lot with which is called the CCMB, which is Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, which is in Hyderabad, and they have what is called the Laboratory for Conservation of Endangered Species, CCMB LACONS. So we work a lot with them. We work a lot with IVRI, which is the Indian Veterinary Research Institute, and we are able to test, and so far we have been able to control COVID in India. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have the next question. What are the career prospects in the field of wildlife education?
Okay, it's a good question. So I think when we say wildlife education, see, we need to be a little more specific. One is to have a basic degree of science, and then having an education, which I'm assuming could be either when we are looking at schools, we are looking at, of course, a mandatory B.Ed. But if we are looking at colleges and universities and higher, we are also looking at, the UGC NET qualification and other things. So to me, it's very, very, it has a lot of potential. If at least not in our country, then in the Western countries, wildlife and also specialization is happening a lot. What I'll also encourage all of you is to also look at interdisciplinary sciences. So, for example, if like I did my master's in wildlife science, but when I did my PhD, I did it in geography. So it is a physical geography where I looked at remote sensing as a tool to study the tiger habitat landscape. So think beyond and think out of box in terms of what interests you and what fascinates you. And it is always good to, merge and do that. Another thing, for example, I'll also say that we as science students, we really seldom look at social sciences, right? Whereas social sciences have a lot of tools, a lot of resources which can be useful for us. And I can again share an example from my own experience that prior to coming here in Central Zoo Authority and in the Delhi Zoo, I was for almost 2.5 years. I was with the Swachh Bharat mission, which was it was a flagship program of the country, and there was a big target to build toilets and provide clean sanitation to the rural India. Now, to do that, one had to use the tools of social, sciences. So, what we call as behavior change. So, there's a new emerging sciences, the new emerging tools, which will help us even in our sector of wildlife conservation and sciences. So, behavior change. How do you change the lifestyle of a person and not make him use a plastic bottle, or how do you kind of ensure that, yes, they do not have cultural taboos of hunting of an animal. So these are very interesting, and I would really encourage all of you to read beyond what the syllabus is, read good books, read what is there in terms of popular papers, and increase your horizon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. The next question is, how is captive breeding facilitated at the zoo? And if it is done so, could you give us an example of it?
Sorry. Yeah, captive breeding now, I think the term that we use in the Act is called captive breeding in the Wildlife Protection Act. By the way, all of you, all the students must look at Wildlife Protection Act 1972. So you will have a better understanding of what is a zoo, what's a national park. And the term is captive breeding, but now we are calling the term conservation breeding. And the reason why we say conservation breeding is that we are saying that we are not just breeding because we need animals. We are trying to have a purpose of why we are wanting to breed animals. And if some of you would have seen, for example, in the early 19th century, it was very popular. It was the in thing in those days to breed a tiger and a lion, right? So many of the zoos in the country had ligers or tigons, right? So it was considered fancy at that time because that's the cultural mindset of that time. But now we know that it's unethical because they are two different species. So you cannot really breed a tiger and a lion. So that's how, our conservation ethic or our way of thinking has evolved. So now we are not saying that we have completely banned, of course. So, we don't create these strange hybrids. And we also say that if you have animals in your zoos, then try to, substantiate the bloodline. And what is the meaning of bloodline is that zoo animals tend to inbreed because if they do not get animals from other zoos,
Dr. Ghosh, you have gone mute.
Yes.
Okay, sorry. Sorry. So I think I must have got lost that I was saying that now we do not encourage hybrids. We do not encourage captive breeding. We are saying conservation breeding. And to encourage that, what we do is that we promote zoos to exchange between each other. Like what Priyanka was mentioning, there is something called ZIMS, so Zoo Information Management Software. So some of you who are, techno geeks and, love to look at data and all. So it's imagine every animal, every, precious animal across zoos in the world has an ID number, which is available on ZIMS, right? So it's like the Aadhaar for all the animals in the world. And this Aadhaar card, this ID of ZIMS helps the zoos to exchange the animals. So it kind of creates, okay, we know that this animal has this parentage and lineage, Y animal has this parentage and lineage, and therefore we should be able to mix and match them and have a better progeny. So that's how we encourage conservation breeding. And this is how. So for example, if some of you were here in the zoo today, you must have heard that we got 3 lions from Shakarbagh Zoo. And these lions have been brought in because to help in the bloodline. So they are young lions, they are just 15 months old each. So hopefully you will be able to see them very soon, the moment they finish their quarantine. And we want to, breed them here and give them a good life and have a good population. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. We have the next question. During natural calamities, a lot of animals get dislocated. How does the forest department handle such situations in collaboration with the zoo authorities?
Okay, good question. And yes, as I said, that if you see the act, we say that every zoo shall act as a rescue center also. So the forest department is bound to help if there is any wild animal, which is, and when I say wild animal, you need to know the difference. I'll come to that later. If any wild animal is in distress, it is, in a way, it's ingrained in the law that the forest department must take care of it. So usually what happens is that you have a good network. So usually people know whom to call. They will call up the nearest forest department ranger, forest guard ki ye ho gaya hai, isko aap kar dijiye. And the forest department, like for example, if you look at Gujarat, they are very well trained. They have a lot of rescue and conflict issues. So what they do is that they have their own equipment and they have their own gear, and they are able to go there and either capture the animal using chemical means. So when we say chemical means darting them, to immobilize the animal and capturing them, or they are able to physically capture by putting a cage and so on. So that's how they are doing. If the forest department is not so well equipped, like for example, I come from Assam cadre. So in Assam, in Kaziranga, we have a lot of floods every year. And there are many orphaned young animals, young rhinos, young elephant calves, and so on. So when you have these animals, you can't just put them back into the forest because they need help, they need care, they need the mother's care. So then that's where you come up with collaborations and you tie up with specialized agencies, and these agencies in turn use veterinarians, and they are able to support for what we call as hand rearing. And when you do hand rearing of an animal, one has to be very careful. There's a term called imprinting. So you do not want to imprint the animal, like our pets in our houses, the dogs and the cats. They listen to us. When we call their name, they come there because they are imprinted. They know that, yes, this human being is my friend. But you do not want to do that for any wild rescue animal if you want to give it a chance to get back into the forest. So it's a wild animal, it needs to be treated as a wild animal. Is that what our motto is? So one has to have a plan and not imprint the animal, keep it away, learn it, show it the hunting techniques and so on. And that's how many of our rescue work happens. But in case the animal is very injured, it's sick, it's old, it cannot survive on its own, then they end up in what we call as, lifetime or rehabilitation centers. So there are several of this also in our country. So any animal which is no longer fit to be released back into the wild is accommodated in these centers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am. We actually have a student and his name is Tanmay. So Tanmay, we have enabled your mic. If you wish, you can unmute and ask your question.
Good evening, ma'am, and good evening the rest of the members who are conducting the program. So my question is, here is the true story of monkeys who were fed by the humans every day with the bread and chapatis. Now, over the course of time, they developed various diseases because of the no movement of monkeys as the foodstuff were served at a particular place. Now, the question is that in zoological national parks, animals are confined within one particular caged area. Will it affect their health as locomotion is limiting? I mean, like developing weak bones over the time. How will you cope up with this?
Okay, yeah, Tanmay, very interesting. I think you asked 2-3 questions in there. And okay, Tanmay, don't feed monkeys. I hope you don't feed them bread. Do you do that? I think I've seen you in the Delhi forests feeding them bananas. I have photographs. Yeah?
No, ma'am, here is a different situation. I am just trying to correlate between the situation in the
No,
zoological park.
no, that's fine. But have you ever fed monkeys? Have you done that? On
No, ma'am.
no,
No,
never?
ma'am.
Okay.
No.
Okay, good. So anyway, the thing is, if you have listened carefully to Priyanka's lecture, there is a term she has used, what is called as enrichment, right? Now, what is enrichment? Enrichment means when the monkey is getting bored inside the in that enclosure or in that area, you give it some activity. You give it something which will help it get out of its boredom. So that is the physical enrichment. Then there is also this nutritional enrichment. It doesn't, and first of all, the monkeys don't get bread in the zoo also. They get fruits. In fact, they get better diet than what they get into in the forest, and that's why it's a problem. Sometimes, in fact, I don't know if you know, but it's mandatory for our zoo animals, especially the carnivores, to have 1 day fasting in a week. So that's done because in the wild उनको रोज तो खाना नहीं मिलता है. So even in zoos, the especially the carnivores, they are on mandatory 1 day of fasting. We have a very interesting macaque, a bonnet macaque in our zoo, who is obviously a dominant alpha male. And what he does is that he is able to eat the food of other, his fellow mates. So now he has become so fat that, the doctor has prescribed a vegan diet for him, right? So that he is going to be on a vegan diet. And we are fine, so we have to now figure out how do we capture him and put him on a vegan diet. So this is a challenge. And but let me tell you that zoos have really improved in terms of food, nutrition. There is a health committee, and the diet is as close to what they would eat in the wild. In terms of the boredom, as I said, yes, it is there, and one needs to constantly evolve. It's a lot of hard work. You have to, not bore the animals, so you have to have surprises. And that's where the enrichment comes in. Thank you.
Tanmay, I hope it answers your query.
Yes, got it.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am. With that, I'd like to. I'm so sorry.
1 minute.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
have a question. Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
Dr. Ghosh, I have 2 questions. One is when you do this conservation breeding, and once you have certain number of population, do you keep them in the zoo or do you release them in the forest? This is one. And the second is, what is the tune of budget allocated to National Zoological Park?
Okay. Thank you there. I think interesting questions, Dr. Kaul. When I say conservation breeding and what do you do in terms of releasing them, yes. So many of our conservation breeding centers are exclusive conservation breeding centers. So for example, the success story in India so far has been on a couple of species, and I can name them. Like for example, we have the red panda, which is in the Padmaja Naidu Zoological Park, which is the Darjeeling Zoo. So this started in the 1980s, 90s, and the red pandas were, bred in captivity and then also released back into the habitat, which is in Singalila National Park, Neura Valley National Park, which are around that area. So that has become a good success story. Very recently, I mean, just should be, and it's still ongoing, is the conservation breeding of mouse deer. Now, mouse deer or the Indian chevrotain, that's one of the very smallest of the deer species that we have in South India. And this was bred in captivity in Hyderabad Zoo. And then once they have bred them enough, and when they say, okay, this is the founder stock that I have, and this is the surplus that I have, then there is a phase-wise release. So we have what we call a soft release. So the animals are taken and then they are sent to the place of release. Then a cordoned off area is made, and then slowly they are habituated, they are fed, and then gradually released. And they are also tagged. So one knows that what is happening to the wild population. So conservation breeding is ideally that. But many of our zoos in India have probably not reached that level. So when they breed animals, they are essentially using them for bloodline exchange. So like, for example, if we get the lions and if we are able to get a certain number, we would be happy to take them to some other zoo and get another animal. Because one should also remember that exchange in India is permitted only between zoos. You cannot capture a wild animal and put it into the zoo for conservation breeding. That's illegal. So it has to be a zoo-born animal which can be exchanged. And exchange is free, by the way. So there is no cost. You have to just exchange the animals and one is able to do that. So that's how the current law is. Regarding National Zoological Park's budget, it's around 23 crores. But it is also, one must understand that we have more than 1,200 animals. So the majority of the budget that we are looking at is primarily for feed, for animal upkeep, for salaries, and it's just about break even. So it's not as if we are dependent on the entry ticket for running a zoo, but it's largely to manage the zoo. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Over to you, Pramit.
Thank you, ma'am. We will take one more question. Divya, we have enabled your mic. You can ask your question. Divya Mangla.
Good evening, ma'am. I have a question. Like, ma'am, Priyanka ma'am told that they are preparing a photo book of animals. So how can we contribute to that? And I have another question, like, how can we intern and volunteer for the zoo? It can be any work like record maintaining or something like that.
Absolutely, Divya. You come tomorrow to the zoo now and you have to start working. Right. So, no, that's, and I'm so glad.
I'm not living in Delhi, so I can come, like remote work can also be available, like record maintaining, something like that.
Very good. So that's where the point is, and maybe I'll request Priyanka to supplement me. So when I said about record keeping, this was just an idea. You know, we have a lot of animals in our zoos, and especially, let's say, deer, like spotted deer or gaur or sangai and so on. And sometimes it is so difficult to tag them. You know, you can't really tag them with ear tags because it's not easy to capture them physically. And especially herbivores, they are very sensitive animals. So I was thinking, and this is just an idea right now, and we were thinking that we could make like a unique photo ID booklet for each of these deer species and give it to the animal keeper, because any, for example, one male animal will have a different kind of antler, another one will have a different style, somebody would have a, a ear differently, or somebody would have some stripes. So because each of us have a different physical appearance. So that was the idea, that if we can have a small booklet, like a photo identification booklet, which will support the animal keeper to know his animals. So that is what the idea is. Regarding how you can help us remotely, of course you can. So in fact, I'll be very happy if people volunteer to write stories, to write, some interesting articles, and we could even start a blog, and we could do with extra hands. So if Divya is willing, we could get, young people to write about what they feel about nature. How do they feel that Delhi Zoo is important for them? I will tell you one very interesting concept which is caught up with the young Japanese. It's called Shinrin Yoku. There is a book as well on this. And the Japanese, as you're aware, are extremely busy. They live their lives like it's a mechanical life for them. So they are all working in big cities, and then they go back, and so they hardly have time for themselves. They're always surrounded with work. So there is this concept called Shinrin Yoku, which is forest bathing, and it's very popular now with them. So they say they just leave aside their mobiles, their every gadgets, and they just go out and they are soaking in the forest. And after this pandemic, I think that is what has taught us. It has taught us that we have to go out, take care of our health, and have a happy and healthy life. So if Divya is willing, we could start a blog for Delhi Zoo. It could be for the youth. It has to be your language. I can't be telling you and preaching you all the time. What is it that that the youngsters want in life in terms of health and happiness? And we could have a smart, fun thing. We could mix and match with lots of photos that we have from Delhi Zoo, and it could do. So that's like a remote. I could think of that. And in person, we could do things like this photographic manual. We want people to help us out with Twitter. We want people to help us out with visitor surveys, how they are feeling. At the end of the day, the visitors have to feel happy. So anybody who has ideas and wants to help us out, and we don't want you to volunteer every day. I think we would want you to do this during your extra time, which is Saturdays and Sundays. That's when we get maximum people. And the volunteers get free lunch. I can announce it today, and we get you a good certificate of experience. If you want it for your higher studies or whatever, we'll be happy to do that. So thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, is there any way like we can contact you, like any email, so that if we have to start a blog?
Right. So Priyanka is the best person to contact, because she is, doing this entirely. And my job is to encourage all of you youngsters, because, the power of youth, we all know. So it's just, this is just an idea. It's up to you all, how you want to do it, what should be the thing, but it has to be positive outlook, right? So how do we attract people to Delhi Zoo? What is it that we could do? So I'll request Priyanka to, send out in the chat box. There is, I think, an ID we have for, which is also on our poster. Otherwise, we will communicate it to your group on outreach, and we'll be happy to connect to you all. Thank you. Right. Sonia Mansoori is there, or has she? Yeah, I can see her.
Yes, that will be the last question for today, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Good evening, ma'am. Yeah, so my question is like the herbivores in the zoo can get food easily, but what about the carnivores? Like it's not a forest to hunt and prey on animals. So like how does the zoo provides them with the food?
आप vegetarian है, non-vegetarian हो, Sonia?
Non-vegetarian.
तो जैसे तुम चिकन खाती हो वैसे उनको भी मिल जाता है. So we
but उनका डाइट थोड़ा ज्यादा होता है, हमारा तो थोड़े में काम चल जाता है. But lion, tigers,
Yeah,
leon,
I know.
they
That's
have
what.
a large appetite, right?
Absolutely. So you can imagine कि zoo में कितना काम होता है कि सबके लिए इतना सारा खाना लेके आओ. You know, so that's how we do it, and I think the average diet, how much it is in terms of kilos, 10 kilo meat, 5 kilo meat, is that what we decide. So it's the doctors prescribe the diet, and they are able to do it. But ये होता है और ये करना पड़ता है.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am, for that answer. Yeah.
So thank you so much, ma'am, for answering every question so patiently. But I promise you, there are more questions that we have, but due to the paucity of time, we are not able to address them. So we'll try to address them in some way or the other, or we'll get those questions towards you. But for now, we are getting to the end of the question and answer segment. Thank you once again, ma'am. Now I'll pass on the baton to Shreya.
Thank you, ma'am.
Over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Now we request our speakers, teachers, and all the members to please switch on their cameras so that we can capture a screenshot of this moment that will be cherished in our minds forever. We will go on a count of 5. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And there we go. Now I request Sonal to take over the mic.
Good evening, everyone. With the amazing zeal and enthusiasm we received from our speakers and the guests and members, the time has now come to take your leave. It is such an honor and privilege to deliver the vote of thanks. I, Sonal Bhura, on behalf of our entire team, extend our heartiest gratitude to Principal Sir, respected Ratnam Ma'am, and our guest speaker, and to all the participants. A special thanks to Dr. K.K. Arora, Principal of ZHDC College, for providing us the support to make the session successful. I extend my gratitude to Dr. Ratnam Kaul, Convener NES, for motivating us. I would also like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Dr. Ruchi Ma'am. Your encouragement has truly been enlivening, and without your technical assistance, guidance, and motivation, this event would not have been turned out a success. Your presence is much appreciated. I, on behalf of Aranya and the entire team, let me call it the Fraternity of Environmentalists, and on the behalf extend a very hearty vote of thanks to our speaker, Dr. Sonali Ghosh ma'am, for gracing us with such amazing knowledge. Thank you, ma'am, for your experience has truly delighted us. It was an honor to hear about your experience, and thank you, ma'am, for conducting the workshop at the National Zoological Park. Every one of us has learned a lot from it. Thank you, Priyanka ma'am, for your insightful knowledge of the wildlife and for briefing us about the functioning of the zoo. It was indeed wonderful to hear from both of you. I am also thankful to all the faculty members, the event organizing committee, members of our technical team, content team, and the graphics team. The event would not have been a success without your heartfelt efforts and contributions. I would now like to ask Shrey to present the token of appreciation to our worthy speaker, Dr. Sonali Ghosh ma'am.
That's amazing.
On behalf of Aranya Zakir Hussain Delhi College, I would like to thank you for enlightening and motivating us. Now I present this token of appreciation to you, ma'am. And thank you, ma'am, for giving us your precious time and thoughts. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. This is amazing. Thank you so much. You know, this is fantastic. Yeah. I never knew that somebody could draw me, but this is amazing. Thank you.
I think, Trey, we should post it to her. Maybe
yes, ma'am. We will.
Okay. Because hard copy
Ma'am,
will
actually, we
better.
are trying to hand over the hard copy to ma'am.
All right,
Actually,
that's better.
Ashwin is in Kerala, so it takes little time to get it here
Yeah,
by
he'll
speed.
post it and then you can
Yes,
give it to her in the group. Yeah.
yes.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And best wishes, and I love to would welcome you all once again to the zoo. Everybody, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. At last, I will conclude on the note of hope that we will see everyone in our coming events. For your participation gives us courage to deliver more amazing events and competitions. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.